Mr. President, do not come to Chicago.
Chicago's a killing field right now.
The city of Chicago does not need a military occupation.
We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
National Guard troops now armed with rifles and revolvers.
I don't believe that troops should be policing American cities.
So for 11 days, there's been no murders. The record goes back years where that's happened.
Washington, D.C. is witnessing something it hasn't experienced in years. 2 full weeks without a single homicide.
A crackdown on crime in Washington, D.C., falling to a 30-year low, down 26% since last year.
In a city long plagued with violent crime, that number is more than just a statistic. It's a signal that something has changed. Many people are pointing to one key factor that they believe is behind this shift, and that's the deployment of the National Guard. In an effort to combat rising crime and homelessness, as well as dealing with the elevated gang violence that has scarred parts of this nation's capital, President Trump authorized the National Guard to assist.
President Trump ordered them in to help clean up crime.
The number of Guard members deployed to the nation's capital has grown to nearly 2,300 from half a dozen states.
Along with that move came federal control of the DC police. While critics labeled the decision extreme, the results, at least in the short term, are hard to ignore. The deployment of the National Guard wasn't about replacing local police. Instead, it was about reinforcing them. National Guard members were strategically placed in some of the neighborhoods that are hardest hit by crime, and near the city schools where safety had long been uncertain. The presence of the National Guard acted as both reassurance and a deterrent. And for the first time in years, families in some areas of DC say they now feel comfortable walking around in the dark. For 14 consecutive days, not a single homicide has been reported. In a city where gun violence has been a stubborn and persistent challenge, that 2-week period feels like a major turning point for the citizens of DC. But the impact goes beyond numbers. It's about the atmosphere on the ground. Streets that once felt tense and unpredictable now feel calm. Police officers are no longer stretched as thin, are able to now focus on long-term strategies like community policing and deeper investigations, while the National Guard remains a steady, persistent presence. And the result? Fewer violent confrontations, fewer disputes escalating on street corners, and most importantly, no lives lost to homicide. For many, it's a glimpse of what a safer DC could look like if these efforts continue. But the ripple effects of this don't stop at the Capitol. Leaders in other states, they're taking notice.
Those of us who are happy to hear that something is going to happen to curb the violence here in Chicago are excited about the National Guard coming.
Illinois Representative Mary Miller, for instance, has openly called for the National Guard to be deployed to Chicago, Illinois. She's pointing to the results in Washington as proof that it could work elsewhere. She expressed hope that the same approach could finally bring relief to communities in her state that's been long plagued by violence.
Today we're talking about crime. For 13 consecutive years, Chicago has led the country in the number of murders. President Trump is not warning that he's bringing in the National Guard. He is promising, and I hope he brings them in tonight.
This growing interest highlights a bigger conversation. Should the federal government play a larger role in policing America's most crime-ridden streets? And if so, what does that mean for local control, community trust, and our civil liberties? And of course, not everyone is on board. Critics argue that bringing in military forces to handle domestic crime blurs the line between policing and combat.
A spokesperson for New York Governor Kathy Hochul telling ABC News Trump's attempts to invoke military power undermines work being done in her state.
And opposition isn't just political. It's coming from the streets themselves. Some gang members in Chicago have even issued online threats, warning that if the National Guard is deployed in Chicago, that they would be fighting back. While it's one thing to sit there and talk behind a screen, the reality of them going online and basically threatening U.S. military starts raising troubling questions about just how desperate some criminal groups have become.
Everyone's talking about how bad Chicago is. Oh! These police are totally overwhelmed. Look at all the criminals.
Which this in turn raises a deeper issue. Would deploying National Guard into these cities really make that big of a difference?
We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
Or would it simply just force gangs to shift their operations and just scattering violence into new areas? History has shown that violence doesn't just go away, it adapts. While heavy military presence can suppress violence, the real test comes in what lies after: rebuilding communities, creating opportunities, and addressing the real roots of crime. But still, for many residents in DC, the presence of the National Guard has offered something that they haven't felt in years: hope. Hope that neighborhoods can be safe again.
I do want to see my people taken care of. I want to see the people that work hard every day supported. And we want to see people being helped.
It should feel like the whole city wants to feel safe.
Hope that children can grow up without hearing gunfire outside their bedroom window. Hope that change, however temporary, might just last long enough to spark something permanent. President Trump, meanwhile, has doubled down on his approach. In a recent Truth Social post, he suggests that Chicago would soon find out why it's called the Department of War, a reference to the fact that he just renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War. The post was paired with an image that's clearly AI, showing Trump in military-style gear, underscoring the message that he intends to expand the National Guard's role beyond DC.
Do you know how many people were killed in Chicago last weekend? 8.
I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
Whether this move proves to be a sustainable solution or just a short-term show of force remains to be seen. What's clear right now is that DC is living through a rare moment of peace in a city that has struggled for decades with violence. 2 weeks without a homicide may not solve everything, but it's proof that change is possible, and that has the attention of cities all across the nation. The debate now shifts to if this strategy works or whether America is ready to see the streets patrolled not just by the police, but by the military. And that, perhaps more than the numbers themselves, is the question that will shape what happens next. If you like the content you heard today, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time.